Hey everyone, it's Mace1370. Today we are going to go over the new ML 5-star Belian. Before we get into it though, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Also, please see the video description for a link to my Discord. Alrighty, so Belian, the new ML 5-star, she is a light knight. Pretty cool hero, has some very unique parts of her kit. You can see her passive here completely denies the opponent the ability to use souls. That includes book, that's soul generation, that's everything. They basically don't get to soul burn ever. And that has some serious ramifications for the draft, which we'll talk a little bit about. Another interesting thing with her kit is that all of her abilities are AoE, so that's another thing to pay attention to. Her skill 3 gives her defense buff, it can provoke the enemy team and does a CR pushback, and then her skill 1 strips a buff, has a chance to activate a secondary attack, which applies additional debuffs, decreased speed and hit chance, and also is scales with her health. So you kind of want to build her like a HP scaling bruiser. And then also her passive here gives her a random buff at the start of the turn, so increased effectiveness, critical hit chance, and continuous healing. So the way I built her is kind of a hybrid build, and this isn't fully Fribbles optimized, and the gear score is not horrible, but I think could be better. I wanted her around 22k HP and 1400 defense, and then I wanted her around 200 speed as well to be able to turn cycle. Some people are building her at 220 speed, so I may try that. The advantage of a faster build is that if you apply speed down here, then you have the potential of like lapping slow units and just perma, CCing them basically. I think there's some RNG involved in that, so I don't think it's necessarily worth building her 220 speed just for that purpose, but I guess it could be a good side benefit. So another thing to note here is that I only built her with 83% crit chance. I was shooting for 85. I figured because she can give herself a crit buff, I wanted to try and take advantage of that without gimping her damage too much. You could run her all the way down to 50% crit, but then I think you're just like not going to do any damage if you don't proc that buff, and that's only going to happen 1 out of 3 turns. So instead, I decided to go with maybe 85% or so percent crit chance, and I figured that this is nice because you'll still have 100% or close to against dark heroes because of the element advantage, and you're not really sacrificing too much by doing that. So the crit, buff kind of makes up for the rest of it. You are going to miss a crit every now and then if you do that. You could just build her 100% crit as well. I think that's an option. It's just hard to fit all the stats in. I wanted at least 250 crit damage, so we got 248, so almost got there. And then as much effectiveness given the rest of these stats as I could get, which was 79. So I think, there may be some merit in pushing this build more towards debuffing or more towards damage, so losing effectiveness and taking more crit damage, or losing crit damage and getting more effectiveness. I'll have to play around a little bit with it more. So far this is mostly working. When she is drafted in the scenarios where she will shine, it seems like she's doing her job. So I may just leave this build as it is. I may take it to 100% crit and go more crit damage. May try to get the effectiveness higher and maybe lose a little bit of bulk. We'll see. I think Adamant Shield is a pretty good choice for her since you're often drafting her with other knights, or at least I have been. You could run Elbrus. I think that's a reasonable choice as well. The thing to note with that though is that this second attack incursion can only proc, I believe, on her turn. Let's see here. Yeah, when used on the caster's turn. So Elbrus is not going to give you incursion, which is the big payoff, I guess, for her skill winning. The Elbrus is nice because you could strip extra buffs. That's probably the best part about it. So I think effectiveness around 80 is okay. I am landing, debuffs on people that run 100 ER on some of their units, but if they're going to run more than that, you're really going to need that effectiveness buff to push you over the edge and be able to debuff them. So far, I've noticed she really warps the draft. It's really extreme. Like when she's on the board, it completely changes your play style, both because she completely shuts off souls and also because she is a complete AoE hero. So units like Rem and LR Crow seem to be good into her, and you have to kind of play around that. Additionally, she totally shuts down, like the Pavel Cleave, because they can't use souls. So if they're going that direction, you can draft her and then they have to pivot. So it seems like she's definitely going to shake up the meta some. So let's go ahead and take a look at a few RTA games with Belian. Okay, so the drafts have been kind of all over the place since Belian has come out. I think it will probably take a week or two to settle for people to really figure the meta out as to what the super safe opening picks are. So I'm seeing a pretty wide variety of openers right now. I pre-ban F10, he pre-bans Fallen Cecilia. So important to note that Angel of Light Angelica is still on the field. The opponent takes Spectre Tenebria, which I feel like may not be a safe first pick anymore, given that there's Belian and AOL and stuff. Particularly Belian, so I take her. I think she's very good into Spectre Tenebria. You have constant AoE, you have debuffs to mitigate her damage, you prevent her from soul burning. It is, I'd say, one of the harder Spectre Tenebria counters that have been released recently, other than just straight up killing her with AoE damage, of course. So then I also take Maid Chloe, mostly just so I don't have to face her. I figure that, the counters to Maid Chloe are ML Haste and Landy, the two main ones you commonly see. Since I have Belian, I'm not super afraid of my opponent taking Landy here. So I go ahead and I take the Maid. He takes ML Haste instead, and then LR Crow. LR Crow, I think, is a reasonable option into Belian. He provides immunity, and he does get benefit from the constant AoE attacks that Belian puts out. However, I think you have to be careful. If Belian is built with some amount of effectiveness, even if you have like 100 ER on your LR Crow, I think there's still a good chance he gets debuffed, and I think it's very difficult to build LR Crow with more than 100 to maybe 150 ER and still keep the rest of his stats kind of in line with, tanky enough and, speedy enough, etc. So I feel like most Belians are probably going to be able to debuff you. So you're probably going to want to also bring a cleanser if you bring LR Crow. I also feel like LR Crow is not great into Soul Weavers, since they're just constantly, healing up his passive damage. So I take Aravi, and Aravi I think is good into LR Crow, since she doesn't mind getting hit with his AoE, she'll heal a bit. She can S1 to injure him and, reduce his overall HP pool, and that affects his damage. I think she's also fine into ML Haste, since she can do the same thing with the injury. She's also single target, so I can ignore the haste and attack other things. And then I take Angel of Light Angelica, since she has buff block. And one of the big ways that you can counter ML Haste is by putting up buff block on the entire team. That way, if somebody does die when you have Maid Chloe and they get rezzed, then ML Haste will not be able to put the barriers and immunity on everyone, which is honestly probably most of what drives the interaction that really overpowers you. Obviously, it's pretty crippling if he gets that skill 3 off again and heals the whole team, but it's much more manageable if you can put buff block on the enemy team. So the opponent takes ML Ball, which is pretty interesting, and LQC. I honestly don't get the ML Ball pick. I guess he was hoping just to ban out Angel of Light Angelica, but I have one more pick, so I can just take Basar. I debated about taking Bysaria, and I think that would be a reasonable option. Bysaria, I think, is a little bit riskier, since in the event that she gets 15%ed, or maybe some of his units are built on ER, she doesn't get that buff block. So I think I had enough damage with, Aravi and Belian that I can just take the Basar here. If he bans out the Aravi, I guess my damage is less, but then I have quite a bit of control. So I think Basar was the correct pick. He guarantees that buff block. He also is going to, wrap around again pretty quickly and provide a bunch of debuffs of his own, like Attack Down and Mischance, which will help, control the enemy team. What's really nice with Basar as well is he goes before Belian, so you can see here, not only have I pushed back the enemy team, but I get to skill 3 with Belian and push them back again, and then provoke the entire team. So this is insanely crippling for the opponent. He's effectively like double push backed, and then he skips his entire first turn whenever that actually happens. So you can see the opponent's only really gotten one turn here, and then my Basar is already going again. So I could honestly probably just save this for the next lap around, but might as well just put it out now. Get even more debuffs on the field. And I think I just want to take out Haste first. He's on Stella Harpa, not Idol's Cheer, so I don't think I'm super punished attacking into him. There's so many debuffs. Even if Stella procs, it's not the end of the world. Go ahead and use Belian here and proc her Incursion, which is super sweet. Putting even more debuffs, like slow on the team. So we've essentially won at this point. There's not much he can do. I debate about killing LQC, but I think it's safer if I just kill the haste, since you know, the haste has the potential to come back if he heals up everyone and I'm not able to kill them before the debuffs wear off. However, LQC is completely debuffed with attack down and mischance, so she's just not going to do anything to me, even if she gets a turn. So I think this was a pretty poor draft from the opponent. People are still figuring out how they want to draft into these new heroes, so I don't expect everyone to always draft well into them, and I certainly have screwed up a few drafts into Belian already myself. So I think that one thing you do have to look out for is that Belian can kind of flex into a control team, right, because she has strip and debuffs herself, and the opponent didn't take anything here to cleanse, you know, and prevent that from happening, so he just gets completely dominated. Here you can see LQC misses, does almost no damage. Even if she hit, it wouldn't kill because of the attack down. LR Crow is down, and now it's just LQC. Basara's skills are back up again, so she's basically just not even going to get a turn. Okay, that's game one. Okay, so I am pick 1 this time. I pre-ban Angel of Light Angelica, the opponent does the same, and I take FCC. I think FCC is still probably a reasonable first pick right now. She does allow you to flex into more of a standard draft or go more on the aggressive side. And I like the fact that she creates an asymmetry where you don't have to worry about tea time, and they kind of do. I feel like the opponent always has to think in the back of their head, what if the opponent drafts tea time? So the opponent takes in Chloe and Blue Crow. I think they're trying to, you know, take passive picks and stay open. I take Landy here. I think Landy is really good into mid Chloe, obviously. You know, she puts up all the buffs, and Landy just goes berserk with all the skill 3s. Crow also buffs, so Landy's a natural choice. She's on Guiding Light, so she hides from his horse unless I get unlucky. In addition to that, you know, Crow's a blue unit, so he's going to be at elemental disadvantage to Landy, and there are many scenarios where if you have attack buff, Landy will just delete Crow before he even gets to skill 3. So you have to be very careful if you're drafting Crow in that type of scenario. I take Aravi here, no particular reason. I'm just trying to draft her more and get a sense of where she's good and where she's not. I feel like she can be good into Blue Crow because if he horses something, she can res it, so that's always nice. You know, she provides damage, and the injury from her skill 1 mitigates the effectiveness of his horse, which is always nice. The opponent takes LQC and Steny. You know, I think both of these are picks targeted at Aravi. And that's okay. We can take Belian here. I think the opponent is weak to Belian since they have Spectre. They have Maid, which will, you know, cleanse out the gate, but she also wants to put up her buffs, and no real other cleanse to speak of. So I think our Belian will get good value. You know, she can strip away the immunity from LQC, she can push the team back, provoke, you know, debuff, and importantly, she denies souls, so the opponent will not be able to soulburn Spectre, which is very important. They can't soulburn LQC to get, you know, an additional S1 and have immunity go back up on her. And I take Ruel just for added insurance in case something gets one-shot, since the opponent has a lot of one-shot type heroes on their team between Crow and LQC. They last pick Rem, which I think is a good pick into Belian, so ban that away. Even though I have Landy, I think Rem can go bananas. Let me rephrase. I've seen Rem go bananas when I draft Belian sometimes, so if at all possible, you kind of want to avoid the Rem. I think an exception to that could be is if you have Spectre, because Spectre, you know, given enough souls, can just soul burn away and kill the Rem in the opener, and then you don't have to worry about her for the rest of the fight. So in some scenarios, I think it's okay to let Rem through, but you know, if you don't have an option of dealing with her quickly, then I think you are kind of rolling the dice a bit. Alright, so the opponent puts all of the buffs up and pushes back APOC. Something that's kind of awkward with Belian is most of the time people have immunity up when she takes a turn. She's only like 205 speed, but I guess everyone builds their DPS like potatoes these days, so I don't think it's worth slowing Belian down. It's just something to note. I think she has a lot of synergy if you can bring something to strip turn 1 ahead of her, like Angel of Light or Basar, like we saw in that previous game. You get a lot of value by popping her skill 3 right away because it prevents them from using their skill 3s. So probably a bit of a gear diff here. LQC with an attack buff went into my APOC and just didn't kill. However, I do have Aureus on FCC and Adamant on Belian, so I have max mitigation on my side. So I guess there is something to say for that. I'm just honestly not a huge fan of LQC. I feel like I can never get her to have enough damage to actually kill anything, but also be survivable enough to take a turn. Every time I use LQC, what just happened to my opponent happens to me, and I just feel bad picking her. So at this point, we're set up to really just delete the opponent with Landy here. Belian is not doing a whole ton here by herself, you know, with her active skills, since the opponent had immunity the first turn, she got stunned, but just the fact that Spectre is not able to soul burn, the opponent's getting no souls, so they can never soul burn Maid, you know, to accelerate into that next skill 2. That alone is really mitigating the effect of Spectre. As an example, if the opponent had souls, I'm pretty sure my APOC would just die in the opener here, right? Because they could have soul burn LQC to get another skill 1, or, you know, probably more realistically, Spectre would have soul burned into APOC and just killed her. So I have an option here. I can ignore Crow. He is coming up next, but he might die to Aureus damage if I don't hit him. And I think I can probably kill him with Landy when he revives. I don't have attack buff though, so this was probably a miscalculation on my part. Not sure if it really would have mattered, since I think if I went in to other targets other than Crow, I think the Aureus damage would have just killed him and he would have gotten a turn either way. So kind of unfortunate. So Crow does get to horse here. And it is just barely enough to kill APOC. So finally Belian is not stunned. They should probably give her immune to stun, right? It's only fair. She's an ML5, and Angel of Light Angelica, an ML4, is immune to stun, so I feel like Belian should have it also. So we can skill 1 or we can skill 3. I'm just going to go for the skill 3 here. I want to get defense buff up, since the only thing standing between my opponent and Landy is my 2 knights, so I want them to, you know, take as many hits as possible. I debate about soul burning here, and I think I decide not to, since I have 2 turns of stealth on Guiding Light, and I don't want to soul burn out of Guiding Light and then just be sitting there, you know, outside of stealth. So if I want to, or if I'm able to skill 3 next turn, I can soul burn then, but I just didn't want to risk popping out of Guiding Light, so I didn't do it. Looks like the opponent splashes into Landy anyways, but thankfully she has skill null, so she still is in stealth. Here we can just burn with Belian for more damage. And we proc Incursion. So that does kill Spectre. LQC is disabled with debuffs. And now that Maid is dead, the opponent is finished. Okay, so I think I'm on second pick in this game. Maid Chloe and F10 are banned. The opponent takes Amelia first. So Amelia can be a very hard hero to fight against if you go the bruiser route. If you're not tanky enough and the Amelia brings enough high damage friends, I feel like you just get run over, since you're essentially letting them cleave you, right, with A-lots. So I feel like oftentimes against Amelia, I have to go aggressive, and one way to do that is with Politis, and I didn't want the opponent to take Angel of Light Angelica, so I took her as well. So now I have 2 book holders, and naturally the opponent takes Belian. I wanted to try this because now that Belian is out, I don't know if this is a good response to Amelia anymore. Normally I would be able to take Pavel here, you know, and then go into a more standard, like, cleave, I guess, with Pavel and friends. However, since the opponent has taken Belian, I don't think that's a safe pick, since the opponent could just take several speed threats in the next 2 slots, right? And then I'm completely hosed, since you know, some people have like 300 Pavels, but even if you have that, the opponent can take 2 300 heroes here and get one through. And best case scenario, you're at a coin flip. Worst case, if they have like, you know, 305 or 310 acids or something, then you just get outsped. So I feel like it's very dangerous to take Pavel in a situation like this, since, you know, you would have to ban Belian and a speed threat, and you can only ban one thing, right? So I decide just to start taking random heroes that can deal with Belian. So I take Rem and I take LRK. You know, another reason I wanted to try this was, okay, let's say I do this and then they take Belian. Is it possible for me to flex into some other type of draft that counters Belian and then still deals with the rest of their threats? And when new heroes come out, you kind of have to just take shots like this and see what happens. You know, the opponent is probably also experimenting as well when a new hero like this comes out. So since I've taken Rem, the opponent has taken Violet, and I would very much like to ban that, because Violet is basically impossible to kill with Rem, and she's my main source of damage right now. So I'm kind of praying that they don't pick anything last that I have to ban. Ruel is annoying for sure, since now the opponent has access to double revive. I take a Tywin. He has a bit of effectiveness, and I'm thinking maybe he can cleanse off some of Belian's debuffs. You know, Amelias are typically low res, so taking a Tywin I think is okay. He gets banned anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So we get Rem, we get LRK. The opponent's Apocalypse Ravi is admittedly a bit annoying, and we do have Politis to at least give us some momentum in the early game and prevent the opponent from using their Soul Weavers. Amelia is on her own artifact, which is pretty obnoxious, since that's going to give them, you know, a good amount of sustain, and we don't have a ton of damage. We go ahead and use Angel of Light Angelica. She does miss a few debuffs, but, you know, that happens. I want to get my LRK going as soon as possible because, you know, Belian is going to be AoEing every turn, and I want Belian to, you know, basically reduce his cooldown. Unfortunately, because you don't have souls, you can never soulburn LR Crow, so it kind of feels bad into Belian in that way. My Rem is popping off because I deserve it. You know, and honestly, LR Crow into even one Soul Weaver feels kind of bad. Into two, it just makes him feel irrelevant. We do have a Death Break on Arabi, and so that's actually going to help quite a bit here, since if the opponent uses any of his Soul Weavers to cleanse, then that means our Politis will activate her passive, which is bad news. Belian has Misty buff here, which is also really nice, and Rem pops off again, because again I deserve it. So we can control Ruel here with Angel of Light Angelica. Ruel does have Potion Vial, but does not cleanse the Silence. I think it's random what Potion Vial cleanses. I'm not honestly sure. I do know whenever I use it, it does not cleanse the debuff I want it to. So Arabi is completely debuffed and probably won't do much. She misses on Rem. And I think we just go into Arabi now and kill her. We need to kill her and the other reviver in Ruel. And Arabi's closer to death, and I think I can control Ruel a little better with Angel of Light, since Arabi has Crimson Seed. We proc an Elbrus counter there from Belian. So her skill 1 does not always strip. And I feel like that's something that you can really high roll on, since it's like 65%. So if you're stripping every turn, like all these immunity buffs from LR Crow go away, and you start landing your own debuffs, and all this other bad stuff happens. I'm a little scared at this point, since I'm kind of running out of damage here, and this APOC needs to die. And then on top of that, we have to control Ruel and prevent her from being able to revive Arabi, right? So they are pretty low on health though. And our Rem does have Demon Mode. So maybe if she pops off again, then we just win. Alright, so Belian goes for the skill 3. We have Sigurd on Rem, so she'll do a bit more damage. We get a lucky dual attack, and that's game. Okay, this game, our second pick, the opponent has pre-banned Tywin, I pre-banned Tea Time Tenebria. They take Maid first, so I want to try basically what I did last game. You know, when they first pick a Soul Weaver, go aggressive with Politis, and see how they punish it. It's possible that maybe I just switch off these heroes, you know, switch their artifacts to something other than Book. Politis could go on Violin, potentially Crown. I guess Angel of Light could go on maybe Spirit's Breath or something like that. But I think, I don't know, I'll leave him on Book for now just to see how it feels. You know, if you're not facing Belian, Book is clearly this, you know, a very strong choice for them. And it's possible that I can adapt a draft so that Pavel is, you know, like a last pick or something, like if the books get through. And if that's the case, I can slow him down. I don't think he needs to be so fast, and maybe even upping his damage would be nice. So they take Spectre, and they're hovering the Belian, and they go for it, so we're gaming. So I'm going to try the Rem and LR Crow here again. I've thought a bit about this, and, you know, Rem does seem like a very solid pick into Belian. She has ample opportunity to, you know, activate her counters. So I think unless you get supremely unlucky, I think you generally come out on top, you know, in that interaction. However, LR Crow just doesn't seem to do enough, and I feel like if they even just get a little bit lucky with the buff strips and just remove his immunity that he provides, then you're just kind of hosed. Something that enables LR Crow to put out a lot of pressure is his Soul Burn, and without that, his damage is not that scary, especially if they have Soul Weavers. So could potentially be a decent option into Belian if you're going very aggressive, like maybe if I don't take Rem here and I take other aggressive type units, I guess maybe he works, but I feel like you probably just kill them before he gets his second skill 3 anyways. So they take Apoc Ravi, which I think is pretty good into LR Crow. You know, her passive basically just heals up his damage, so and she can injure him. And then they also take Violet, so can't really let Violet through because we have Rem. So I need another damage threat. Last time in this position I took ML Tywin. I think that's okay. I think it's better and probably more consistent if you take a damage threat instead, so you can actually close the game out rather than relying on debuffs. I think Closer Charles could be okay. He provides attack buff for the team, he CR pushes everybody, and he puts out a pretty significant amount of pressure on his skill 1. So I'm going to take Closer Charles, and the opponent's going slow, so I think Closer Charles should make it through. I'm anticipating that they're going to ban Angel of Light Angelica. Or I guess maybe not, because they have Spectre, Tenebria, and Maid. So maybe they let her through and they ban Politis, but instead they ban LR Crow, and I think this is a bad ban. A really bad ban. I think they should have maybe banned Politis or Closer Charles or even Rem.
I won't stand down. I will deliver.
So we can open up here with Angel of Light Angelica. We do land Silence on everyone, which is nice, so if Maid Chloe wants to skill 3, she's going to have to Soul Burn. Closer Charles gets to use his skill 3 to open.
The situation is critical.
I could skill 3 with Politis here. If I put hit down on a few of them, then Maid Chloe can't cleanse everything, but I feel like that's kind of risky, since if either I miss it or if she's able to dispel the unbuffable, then it just doesn't do very much. Luckily we resist the bop there, so that was a 15% in our favor, and Rem pops off, so a 20% in our favor, so that was an unfortunate turn for the opponent. Now our Politis gets to go. Does a pretty good amount of damage. I guess like in these scenarios, like Violin would be nice because you'd be stripping off the maid buffs. Luckily, APOC kept her buff block though. She does almost kill Politis, so that's a little unfortunate. I think she's mostly done her job. Maybe that was an argument to skill 3, is that she's just going to die. Looking back at it. Well, Politis is dead. That's okay, because now Rem has Demon Mode and counters again. And then Angel of Light Angelica triggers her passive. So Charles has Evasion and a Skill Null, so there's a decent chance that he laps around. I guess we push back Belian. Doesn't really do much to silence Maid Chloe.
Don't come near me. Look into my eyes.
So Spectre skill 3s and completely destroys my Charles debut, because why would he dodge? So he gets stunned, but Rem pops off again. So when in doubt, just pick Rem and hope that she 20%s every single turn. Games are kind of unwinnable for your opponent when she does that. Okay, so that's game.
Stand down.
Okay, one more game. I'm first pick, so I take FCC. Maid is banned out. The opponent takes Amelia and Landy. So this is an opener that I feel is very weak to Belian. I take Politis, and then I take Belian as well. And I think the combination of these two is going to be very difficult for my opponent to deal with. Belian is going to constantly AoE and break Landy out of stealth, as well as debuff her. Politis is going to do the same thing if Amelia ever uses any of her skills. The opponent takes Rem, so that is a good pick into what we just did. And then Eller Crow. So you can see people are just taking these two heroes whenever people take Belian. But I don't think Eller Crow is a huge problem, really, at least what I've seen so far. Rem, I think, might be. And unfortunately, we do have, you know, a last pick to deal with, and I don't want to put myself in a position where I need to ban the Rem, because then they could pick something I need to ban in last pick, and I lose. So I'm debating here about taking Spectre. I think Spectre is good into Rem, and would give me another book, so I'd have 2 books I could Soulburn into her, and then I take Pavel. So now I have 2 answers into Rem, so whichever one he bans is okay, because I can blow up the Rem with the other one, hopefully. Opsig I don't think I can let go through, since none of my units other than Pavel are particularly fast, and I have a sneaking suspicion that Pavel's getting banned. So we have to ban out the Opsig. I think if Opsig, you know, got a turn there, that would just be really devastating for us. Would probably just one-shot Politis, and then, you know, we'd lose. So we're going to let the Rem and the LRK through. Plan here is to take out the Rem first, and then dismantle the rest of the team. The opponent is debating about whether or not they should skill 2 with Amelia. They opt to hold it. I think that's generally what most people do against Politis. LR Crow gets to go and use his skill 3.
This is a formidable opponent.
I'm deciding if I want to greed or not and use skill 3 here. I decide to do it. This was actually just a misplay, I think. I'm going to pop out Landy with Belian anyways, and I'm not going for her. And all this does is let Rem counter and also put up a shield on her. So I think this was actually real dumb. I should have just not skill 3'd there. Rem now has that much more health I need to work through. Although I guess I can skill 3 with Belian now and probably remove the shield, so maybe it doesn't matter. Rem counterattacks again. This is unfortunate. We do get our skill bonus attack there, the incursion from skill 1. Unfortunately did not strip off immunity from Landy, so she is not debuffed. Rem is, so we can just go into Rem here.
You want to try me?
And I think this is going to be barely enough. Even if it's not, we will at least be able to stun her and prevent her from taking a turn, and can likely finish her back on the wraparound.
I will step on you.
And yes, it is enough, so Rem dies. And Belian should be able to take apart the rest of the team.
The children will help.
So he skill 2s with Amelia there. Politis goes, strips away the immunity, which is nice. Landy does not have enough buffs to skill 3,
Get ready.
so not going to do much. We can use our skill 3 with Politis here to break out Landy.
Just feel sorry for them.
So LR Crow gets to skill 3 again, but he has Misty buff, so I don't think this is going to do a whole lot. It kind of doesn't.
As long as I'm holding this spear, I won't back down.
You know, we have lifesteal on our Spectre, so I think LR Crow is basically just never going to kill her, especially not with hit down. So we really just have to take out the Landy here. I'm debating if I want to skill 1 or skill 3. I decided to go with the skill 1. I wanted the strip, and I get lucky and get an incursion. So LR Crow is debuffed again. And we can just go into the Landy with Spectre.
For Felicia.
And then Politis is going to be able to finish her off for the game. So let me know what you think about Belian in the comments below. I hope you're enjoying her. And make sure to like and subscribe. Later.